I always thought that if I achieved enough, if I worked harder, climbed higher, made it undeniable, then maybe they'd finally see me. Maybe they'd finally say, "We're proud of you, Jenna." But last week I graduated with a joint MBA and JD from Harvard. And you know what they said instead? They said, "It's funny, we almost didn't keep you." Let me rewind. My name is Jenna Morales. I'm 28, first generation American, first in my family to go to college. And now first to graduate from Harvard. Not just one degree, too. It took everything. Late nights, debt, isolation, sacrifice. But I made it. So of course I threw a celebration. Nothing flashy, just a rooftop bar in Chicago with a skyline view, soft jazz, good food, and people I cared about. I paid for it all myself because my parents never could, or wouldn't. They showed up late. Eduardo and Mariela Morales, still dressed like they were headed to Sunday Mass. No flowers, no card, not even a smile that reached their eyes. And my older brother Daniel didn't even bother to come. Too busy being a war hero / firefighter, I guess. He's always been the golden one, the firstborn, the son they brag about, the one who gets medals and parades, while I get silence. I greeted them anyway, because I'm still that daughter, still trying, still hoping. We sat down. The evening rolled on, laughter from my colleagues, toasts from professors, compliments about how I held myself. And then, my mother lifts her glass, smiles faintly, and says, "It's funny, we almost didn't keep you." She laughed, like it was some kind of joke. But there was no punchline, just that sentence, hanging there, slicing through the air. And that's when everything changed. That night was supposed to be the start of my life. But instead, it became the night I realized what I had to leave behind. Forever. I used to tell myself she didn't mean it, that maybe it was just a slip, a bad joke, a poor choice of words. But the truth is, she meant it. She always did. I was never meant to be the favorite. I was barely meant to be born. When I was 9, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen late one night. The lights were off. I was supposed to be asleep, and I'll never forget what my mom whispered to my dad. We couldn't afford another baby, but what were we supposed to do? They didn't say my name. But they didn't have to. Daniel was already 12 by then, straight A's Little League champion, the golden boy. I was the afterthought, the oops, and that's how it always felt growing up. Daniel got all the praise, all the attention, all the applause. Private baseball coaches, new cleats every season, a birthday party with a magician one year, and a bounce house the next. Me, I got hand-me-downs and paper plates. My 7th birthday was at home with a store-brand cake that said, "Happy birthday, Gemma." They didn't even spell my name right. But I smiled, because that's what I was good at. Smiling, being quiet, cleaning up, disappearing. The rules were never the same. When Daniel crashed my dad's car at 16, they said he's under a lot of pressure. Be gentle with him. When I got home 10 minutes late from a study group, grounded for 2 weeks. No phone, no TV, no explanation. He could do no wrong, and I could do no right. Even in college, it never changed. When I graduated undergrad, summa cum laude, top of my class, no one came. No hugs, no flowers, no family photo. But 6 months later, they flew across the country to see Daniel accept a firefighter bravery award in Texas. They posted about it for weeks. "Proud of our hero," the caption said. I wasn't even mentioned. I started telling myself it didn't matter. That maybe I was stronger because I didn't need validation. But deep down, I just wanted to be seen. I wasn't trying to be better than Daniel. I just wanted to matter too. So I worked harder. I took every AP class, won scholarships, held part-time jobs. And still when the conversation came up at home, it was always Daniel's risking his life. Daniel's making a difference. And me? Apparently, I just read books. It didn't matter how much I tried, how many boxes I checked, how much I gave. To them, Daniel was the miracle, and I was the reminder of a choice they almost didn't make. The night of my graduation party, I told myself, just get through it. Smile. Be gracious. Don't expect too much. I'd planned every detail. The rooftop view of the city, the candles, the jazz trio in the corner. I even picked the wine my dad used to talk about but never bought for himself. I wasn't trying to show off. I just wanted one moment where I could feel like I belonged. My coworkers came. Professors from Harvard made the trip. Mentors from my summer internships hugged me, toasted me, said, "Jenna, you did it." And I smiled. I really did. Because for a second, it almost felt real. Then my parents walked in. Late, of course, my mom in beige heels and a tight smile. My dad in his navy sport coat like he was attending a job interview. And Daniel nowhere. No text, no excuse, not even a lie. They sat down like they'd done me a favor just by showing up. Didn't greet anyone, didn't say congrats, didn't even look around to notice how many people were there. For me. Still, I tried. I introduced them to my boss from the firm, to my professors, to the judge I interned for last summer. Everyone was warm, polite, kind. "You must be so proud of your daughter," one of my mentors said, raising a glass. And my mom, she gave this little shrug and said, "We're proud of both our children. Daniel's a firefighter, you know, a real hero, just like that." Turned the spotlight onto him. Again, people went quiet for a second. But then, someone else stepped in, trying to redirect. My manager stood up and gave a toast. He talked about my leadership, my work ethic, how I'd outperformed expectations, even under pressure. Said I was one of the most promising young legal minds he'd worked with. Applause broke out. Genuine, strong, the kind that makes your chest ache a little because it feels like something you've been chasing for years finally touched down. I looked at my parents, waiting, hoping. And then my dad leaned over and said, "She's smart, sure, but Daniel runs into burning buildings. That's something you can't teach." I felt the smile on my face crack. Not all at once, just enough that I had to take a breath to keep it together. It was like they couldn't let me have one night. Not even this. A friend of mine, bless her, turned to them and said gently, "Well, this is still a really big accomplishment. I hope you're proud of her." My mom nodded like she was being polite at a dinner party, then said, "It's fine, I suppose." Fine. That word echoed in my skull like a curse. I had given my life to make this happen. I had bled for this degree. And all they had to offer was fine. Then came the moment, the one I'll never forget. My father leaned back in his chair, swirled the wine I paid for, and said casually, "You know, it's funny. We almost didn't keep her." My chest tightened, my ears rang. I thought I misheard, but my mom laughed, that same soft little laugh I'd heard my whole life when she was about to say something cruel and pretend it was nothing. She was an accident. We were barely making ends meet. We almost didn't go through with it. My fingers clenched around my glass, and all I could think was, "Why are you saying this? Why here? Why now?" And then it hit me, because they didn't care who was listening. They never had. This wasn't new. It was just the first time they said it loud enough for the world to hear. I don't even remember standing up. One second, I was sitting there frozen, and the next, my chair screeched against the floor. Every head turned. The music stopped. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. I said, "Do you have any idea what I had to do to get here?" My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. "Do you know how many nights I didn't sleep? How many jobs I worked just so I wouldn't have to ask you for help?" My mom rolled her eyes. "Jenna, not here." "No," I said, "exactly here. Because this is the first time anyone's ever actually seen me." The air got thick, you could feel it. The kind of silence that doesn't calm, it strangles. I turned to my father. "You talk about Daniel saving lives, but who do you think kept this family alive all these years?" He frowned, pretending not to understand. I I paid for your mortgage when you were behind, I said quietly. I covered Daniel's rehab when you didn't even know he went. My mom's face froze. My dad's eyes went cold. And all you've ever done, I said, is make me feel like I was the mistake you wish you could erase. He stood up slowly, red creeping up his neck. You're being disrespectful. No, I said, I'm being honest. He pointed his finger at me, jaw tight. We wish we never had a daughter like you. The words sliced through the air. Clean, sharp, final. You could hear someone gasp across the table. A fork dropped. Even the jazz players went still. My mom didn't say anything. She just looked away, and that was somehow worse. Because silence can scream louder than words ever could. I felt something inside me go still. Not breaking, just done. I looked around the table, my colleagues, my professors, my friends, all staring wide-eyed, not knowing what to do. Then I turned back to my parents, and I said, if that's what you wish, then maybe it's time I start living like I was never yours. I set my napkin down, picked up my bag, and walked out. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe. I just walked. Through the quiet restaurant, past the waiter holding the champagne I ordered for the toast that would never happen. Past the door, into the night. Chicago was cold that evening. The wind off the lake hit my face like ice. The city lights blurred, but not because of tears, because for the first time in my life, I was seeing clearly. I wasn't the accident anymore. I wasn't the afterthought. I wasn't the quiet one cleaning up everyone else's mess. I was free. At least that's what I told myself. But freedom comes with a price, and I was about to find out just how heavy it really was. All I wanted was one night, one moment where I could finally be enough. Not the background character, not the good girl, not the afterthought, just enough. And for the first hour, it almost felt like I was. The rooftop was filled with people who believed in me, mentors, professors, partners, from the firm I was about to join. All of them had watched me climb my way up brick by brick. One of my former law professors raised a glass and said, I've taught thousands of students, but Jenna Morales, she's the one I'll remember. People clapped, smiled, cheered. My boss from the law firm stood next. He told a story about how I rewrote a merger contract overnight and saved the client millions. Called me relentless, brilliant, a future leader in law. And for a second, I almost let myself believe it. I turned to my parents. They were seated at the far end of the table, barely clapping, whispering to each other like they were bored. That's when one of my guests leaned over and said with the warmest smile, "You must be so proud of your daughter." My father chuckled. The kind of chuckle you let out when someone asks a ridiculous question. "We're proud of both our kids," he said. "Daniel saves lives. Jenna, well, she reads books." My heart stopped. Someone laughed nervously. You could feel the shift, that cold gust of awkward tension that fills a room when someone says something they shouldn't have. And then my mother jumped in like she couldn't stand to be outdone. "She's always had something to prove," she said, sipping her wine. "Maybe it's because, well, we weren't sure about keeping her back then." I blinked. "Excuse me," she smiled. The kind of smile that says this is totally normal conversation. "Oh, come on," she said. "You don't remember. You were the oops baby. We were just kids. We said things. But look, you turned out okay." "Okay." My voice came out lower than I expected. I looked around. Everyone had gone quiet. Forks halfway to mouths, eyes darting away. I stared at my parents, hands trembling under the tablecloth. I took a breath, then pushed my wine glass forward. Not hard enough to break it, but just enough that it hit the center of the table with a loud, sharp clink. "I paid for this dinner," I said. Calm, steady, every plate, every bottle, every seat at this table. Their faces froze. "And you came here to humiliate me. No one said a word. My mom looked like she wanted to explain. My dad raised his eyebrows like I was the one making a scene. But I wasn't done. Not anymore. I could feel the blood rushing to my face. Every word they'd ever said about me, every comparison, every dismissal, it all hit at once. I looked at them and said quietly, "Do you even realize what I had to do to get here?" My mother frowned. "Jenna, not now, no," I said. "Now. Because this was supposed to be the moment you finally saw me." The table was silent. Every guest frozen. Every breath held. I turned to my father. "Do you know how many nights I stayed up studying while working double shifts? How many times I covered the rent, the bills, Daniel's messes so you wouldn't lose the house?" He didn't blink, just sat there with that same disappointed look he always wore when he looked at me. I kept going. "When Daniel totaled your car, you told him accidents happen. When I got a B+, you asked what went wrong. When I won my first case, you said, well, Daniel saves lives." My father leaned back in his chair. "Are you done?" he asked. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so familiar. "No," I said. "I'm not." I looked straight at my mother. "I paid for this dinner. I paid for his rehab. I paid for everything you never thanked me for. And still, somehow I'm the one who doesn't measure up." Her lips pressed tight. My father's jaw flexed. Then he said, "You've always been ungrateful. We gave you a roof, food, a name, and this is how you repay us, by embarrassing us in front of everyone." I stood there, hands shaking, but voice calm. "You didn't give me a name, you gave me a lifetime of earning it. And then it happened." The words I will never forget. He looked at me with that cold, deliberate stare and said, "We wish we never had a daughter like you." It didn't even sound angry, it sounded final. A spoon hit a plate somewhere. Someone gasped. But I didn't move. I felt something inside me go completely still. Not pain, not sadness, just clarity. I looked around that table at all those faces watching this train wreck in real time, and I realized the only people who ever made me feel small were the ones who should have made me feel loved. So I said, "If that's what you wish, then maybe it's time I start living like I was never yours." I set my napkin down, pushed my chair back, and walked out. I didn't look behind me. Not once. The Chicago wind hit my face the second I stepped outside. It was freezing sharp, and it felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. No tears, no shaking, just air. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was free. Or at least, I thought I was. Because walking away from them was easy. Learning to stop hearing their voices in my head, that would take a lot longer. I walked home in silence. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because for once I didn't owe anyone an explanation. The streets were quiet. The wind was brutal. My heels clicked against the pavement like punctuation marks to a sentence I should have said years ago. When I got to my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I just stood in the dark coat, still on purse, still in hand, and let the quiet settle over me like a blanket. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even when I took off my shoes and sat on the edge of my bed staring at the floor like it might open up and give me answers. My phone buzzed. 10 missed calls. All from my parents. Then a text from my mom. "You embarrassed us tonight. I hope you're proud of yourself." "No." "Are you okay?" "No." "We need to talk." Just blame. Just guilt. And I felt it, that familiar tug in my chest. The urge to reply, to fix it, to explain, but I didn't. Instead, I set the phone down, closed my eyes, and whispered, "I'm done." Not out of anger, out of exhaustion, because that night wasn't the beginning of something awful. It was just the latest chapter in a story that's been quietly breaking me since the day I was born. People think pain shows up all at once like an explosion, but the truth is it leaks in slowly. One moment, one comment, one missed birthday at a time. I grew up in a house where silence was louder than love, where disappointment wore the face of duty, and where I learned that being strong meant not needing anyone. But that's not strength. That's survival. And I was tired of surviving. The next morning, I got up early, made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. I logged into my online banking. 3 automatic payments were scheduled for that day, one for my parents' utility bill, one for Daniel's medical insurance, and one for the second mortgage I'd been secretly covering since last year. I stared at those numbers. Every month I sent money like it was nothing. No one asked. No one thanked me. It just disappeared. Like me. I hovered my cursor over each one, clicked cancel, then confirmed. My hand trembled, but my chest felt light. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. Out of peace. They had taken so much from me. Time. Energy. Worth. And this time I was taking something back. Not because they didn't need it, but because I finally realized I do. The first thing I noticed after canceling those payments was the silence. Not the kind I grew up with, the cold, heavy silence that followed disappointment. This one was different. It felt clean, like I'd finally stopped holding my breath. I poured another cup of coffee, looked out the window, and for the first time in a long time, the world didn't feel so heavy. No more money leaving my account for people who never even said thank you. No more waiting for a text that said, "We're proud of you," just me, and a fresh page. That week, I threw myself into work. I wasn't running anymore. I was building. My firm had just taken on a massive tech merger, and my manager asked me to lead a portion of the legal restructuring. 6 months ago, I would have second-guessed myself. Now, I said yes, and I meant it. The meetings came fast. The hours were long, but I wasn't doing it for approval. I was doing it for me. And people noticed. Senior partners started calling me into rooms I used to peek into. Clients started using my name instead of calling me the junior associate. And every time someone said, "Good work," Jenna, it didn't feel like luck. It felt like mine. Meanwhile, my apartment, the one bedroom I used to think was too quiet, started to feel like home. I bought a soft gray couch, hung up the prints I'd kept in storage for years, lined a bookshelf with novels I hadn't touched since law school. I planted a little row of succulents on the windowsill, lit candles that smelled like cedar and clean linen, and started cooking again. Not for anyone else, just for me. Some nights I danced barefoot in the kitchen, with jazz playing low in the background. Other nights, I sat on the floor with the takeout and a glass of wine watching the rain hit the window. And then there was Nina, my best friend since college. Loud, brilliant, stubborn in the best way. She stopped by one Saturday with 2 bottles of wine and enough Thai food to feed 6 people. Still breathing, she asked, kicking off her shoes. I laughed. Actually, I think I'm starting to live. We sat on the floor, legs crossed, eating noodles and laughing about everything, from our horrible old roommates to the time we nearly got kicked out of a lecture for whispering about a professor's weird shoes. The weight in my chest started to lift. "You seem different," she said. Different, how I asked. Like you stopped apologizing for existing. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Because she was right. I had spent most of my life shrinking myself, being the quiet one, the helpful one, the one who didn't make waves. But now I was taking up space. And it didn't feel selfish. It felt right. Later that night, after Nina left, I stood at the window watching the city lights blink and blur. The wind from the lake moved through the trees below, and for a moment, everything was still. Not empty. Not lonely. Just still. Peaceful. And in that stillness, I whispered something I never thought I'd say out loud, even just to myself. "I'm proud of you, Jenna." And this time, I believed it. A few weeks passed. No texts, no calls, just silence. And honestly, I was okay with that, until the knock came. It was a Wednesday, rain tapping against the window, jazz playing soft in the background. I had just finished reviewing a contract when I heard it, 3 firm knocks on the door. Not frantic, Not polite, just certain. When I opened it, I froze. Daniel, my brother, he looked tired, older, the sleeves of his hoodie pushed up, his eyes bloodshot but clear. Hey, he said like we hadn't gone a year without speaking. I didn't move, didn't invite him in, just stared. Can I talk to you? He asked. I won't stay long. I stepped aside. Barely. He walked in like he used to when we were kids, like nothing had changed. But everything had. He looked around at my apartment. Said, "You've done well for yourself." I didn't answer. Just folded my arms and waited. He sat on the edge of the couch. Leaned forward, elbows on knees. I heard about the dinner, he said. Mom and Dad, they're not doing great. I raised an eyebrow. So he nodded. Dad's been quiet. Mom's been crying. They feel bad. Do they? He shifted. Uncomfortable. They didn't mean it the way it came out. You know how they are. Yeah, I said, I do. Then he got quiet. And for a moment I thought maybe this was it. The apology. The one someone in that family owed me. But instead, he looked up at me and said, they need help. Financially. And I was hoping you'd consider. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. I stared at him. You came here to ask for money. No, he said quickly. Yes, I said. You did. Look, he said, she's your mother. He's your father. At the end of the day, we're still family. I shook my head. Family doesn't make you earn love. Family doesn't break you and then show up with a bill. He looked down. Didn't argue. I walked to the door and opened it. Daniel stood slowly. You really won't help them? He asked. I did, I said. For years. While you were wrecking cars and getting high, I was paying their bills. While they were calling you a hero, I was sending grocery money home from a dorm room. And the one night I asked for something in return, they told me they wished I didn't exist. His jaw tightened. He wanted to defend them. But he couldn't. Because it was true. I looked him in the eyes and said, you want to help them? Go ahead. But I'm done, and I'm not sorry. He stepped into the hallway, turned back. Jenna, he said softly, you've changed. I nodded. Yeah, I finally stopped bleeding for people who sharpen the knife. I closed the door, locked it, leaned against the wood and took a breath. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt whole. The funny thing about walking away is that everything gets quieter first, and then suddenly, everything gets louder, but in the best way. The silence from my family didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like permission. Permission to build, to speak, to exist without asking. At the firm, things took off. That tech merger I'd been assigned, it closed early. And under budget. Our client renewed their contract, then doubled it. The senior partners pulled me aside, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a kid pretending to be an adult. I felt like I belonged. You've earned this, my boss told me. We want to put you on the next big account. Lead it. I nodded. No fake humility. No voice in my head whispering, but they don't really mean it. Just, thank you. Yes, let's do it. The work was hard, long hours, complex negotiations, high stakes calls that could change everything. But I loved it because I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was just showing up as me, and that was enough. Around the same time, something else happened, something I didn't expect. A local business magazine reached out. They wanted to interview me, a feature on rising women in law. At first, I hesitated. What could I possibly say that mattered? But then I remembered all the people who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. All the young women who were probably sitting in dark apartments right now, wondering if their silence would ever be heard. So I said yes. I told the truth. Not about my family directly, but about what it meant to grow up unseen, to constantly earn what others were given, and to stop apologizing for wanting more. The article went live. The headline read, Jenna Morales on Leading Through Resilience. I thought maybe a few people would read it. Instead, LinkedIn exploded. Emails flooded in. Messages from strangers, law students, single moms, women who had walked away from their own quiet battles. They said, I saw myself in your story. I cried reading your words. I didn't know other people felt this way too. And one quote kept getting shared over and over, you don't have to earn love from people who use it as a weapon. That one line, something I hadn't even realized I'd said, became a lifeline for people I'd never met. Michael, my old college friend, the one who'd seen me through the worst of it, texted me a screenshot of the quote circled in red. His message just said, you started a quiet revolution. But not everyone was quiet. The emails came next, not from strangers, from my parents. Short, cold, sharp. You made us look bad. How dare you speak about this publicly? Your brother's struggling, and you're out here bragging. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. Because I wasn't writing for them. I never had been. I was writing for the girl I used to be, and the thousands like her who still believe they have to stay small just to stay safe. And for once, I let it be enough. The world saw me, but more importantly, I saw myself. Not the mistake, not the backup plan, not the invisible girl in the corner. Just Jenna, whole, capable, unapologetic. The night of the magazine feature release, Nina threw a little party at my place. Nothing huge, just close friends, colleagues, people who had become family. The music was low, the wine was good, and for once the room didn't feel too big for me. No one asked about my parents, no one tiptoed around the past. They just showed up. For me, Michael was there too, with his usual 2 bottles of red and a cheese board so dramatic it barely fit on the table. At one point, he raised his glass and said, look around, Jenna. This is the family you built. And I looked at the laughter, the love, the warmth. I nodded. Yeah, I said, the kind that chose me back. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights shimmered below. The breeze from the lake swept my hair back like a quiet reset. And I thought about everything that had led me here. The nights I cried alone in dorm rooms, the birthdays they forgot, the dinners where I sat across from people who never truly saw me. I thought about Daniel at my door asking for help without ever offering an apology. And I thought about the version of me who would have said yes. The girl who believed love had to be earned through sacrifice, through silence, through shrinking herself until she could fit inside other people's expectations. She was gone now. In her place stood a woman who didn't need to be chosen because she had chosen herself. Inside, my phone buzzed, a message from someone who had read the article. It said, your story gave me the strength to finally leave a family that never really saw me. Thank you, I smiled, not because I fixed anyone, but because I finally stopped trying to fix what was never mine to carry. I stepped back into my apartment, turned off the lights, lit a single candle. The room was quiet, but not empty. It was full of a breath of healing of me. I curled up on the couch with a blanket and let the stillness hold me. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for an apology. Wasn't hoping for a call. I wasn't chasing closure from people who had already closed the door. Because I had found something better. Peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from finally remembering who you are. I'm not the daughter they wanted, but I am finally mine. And that's everything.